podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Thicket.
Hey, Rachel.
Hello.
Hey, Erin.
Yes, I'm Rachel.
I'm Erin.
I'm Nicole.
So if this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, welcome. And if you've been listening to us since the beginning or somewhere in the middle, thank you. We really appreciate you guys. It's such a gift that people are tuning in. So today we wanted to announce actually that we're going to be going on a break soon. So our next episode is going to be the last one of this first season of our podcast.
Erin's shaking.
So cool.
It's not. There's 3 more after this one.
Oh, whoops. Well, there you go. Erin's in charge of our schedule and I am not. And that right there tells you why. False alarm. We will have 3 more episodes.
It's the second last one that we're recording, though. That's why.
Okay.
That's true. It is.
Okay. So to clarify for everybody out there, and me included, after you hear this episode, there will be 3 more. And then we'll be
basically we're going with
season.
the university kind of school year. So September to end of April.
Yeah. So last one's April 29th, and then we'll be
on hiatus till September. So speaking about, plans like that in summer and things like that, vacations, a lot of my friends have been thinking like doing their dream vacation, because I think this is like a COVID phenomenon maybe that's happening where people are like, if I could travel and I had all the money in the world, where would I go? So I wanted to ask you guys, where would you go if you could go anywhere?
See, it's got to be a toss-up, because right before COVID happened, I had already paid the deposit for and was supposed to be going to Rome for a conference of consecrated virgins, because it was
cool.
Which sounds like,
awesome.
Honestly, it sounds like the worst, like the lamest party ever. Like and
I love it so much. That's
I know,
amazing.
right? I know. But it was because it was the 50th anniversary of releasing the new updated rite for consecration of a virgin living in the world. So so we were supposed to go, and it was gonna be like 600 consecrated virgins from around the world meeting with Pope Francis and hearing all kinds of stuff and whatever. So if I was gonna do anything, it would be to go back to Rome, because it is so beautiful, and I feel like I could spend my whole life there and never get bored of seeing all the stuff. But also the Holy Land. There's also again, with consecrated virgins, like we are just...
You guys like to party.
We like to party. There's like a tour that's being organized of the Holy Land, and I would really love to go to the Holy Land. But I don't know if I'll do that with the consecrated virgins, because I really like traveling on my own. But there is something to be said of, if you're going with a group of people from the church, then sometimes, the priests and stuff have access to really cool places.
They do.
That you don't get to go if you're just like a rando traveler by yourself. So I'd still say that, Yeah,
I mean, that's a great destination. I don't think you can go wrong with that one. The Holy Land.
Very pious answers. I would go to the Holy Land and to Rome.
And Rome.
And then maybe to where the family's house was located in...
But only if it's with many, many other consecrated virgins.
That's right. So we all pray to our divine
Francis.
spouse.
Why are we all like really bad pseudo-British accents? Why don't I was just thinking that?
No. That's how consecrated virgins talk. It's
Apologies to anybody in Britain that is listening to us.
In the UK.
I
Sorry
have a half decent British accent, actually. I have to say that, because I have British cousins and I love accents. So
mine always turns into a Filipino accent. Doesn't matter what I start out with. It just goes to
it just
Filipino.
Filipino.
That's right.
Awesome.
Okay.
That's
You might have to cut this part out, guys.
Well, I love Filipino accents, but I'm not that good at them. I don't know them that well.
I think I would travel. Mine's not going to be as pious as Erin's. I don't know. There's a volcano that just erupted in Iceland. And every time I look at like pictures of Iceland, I just think it looks so cool and so wild.
It does look cool.
Just icy, and not icy, actually, it's quite green, but like not what's the word I'm thinking of, like kind of like just rugged and the stark
forlorn.
Yeah, and I like that. I think it's I would love to go there.
Yeah,
I would go with you. I would go with you there
after the Holy Land.
The
after
Holy
Rome and
Family
Holy
didn't
Land.
grow up there.
I know.
That's okay though, you
There's no
know?
consecrated virgins. Maybe
Yeah.
there is.
I mean,
Maybe there
maybe, yeah.
are. Does
Maybe
anyone
I could be the first consecrated virgin
in
in
Iceland?
Iceland.
Okay. All right.
Just visiting.
We can
I
do
feel
that. We
like
can
it's
do that.
ice. Okay, this is a weird thing to say, but like Iceland or like Iceland. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Which is it? Is it Ice?
Well,
it's
I've
like
always heard
Iran,
Iceland.
Iran. I mean, it is Iran. That's what it is, guys. I'm sorry
Right.
for everybody who says Iran. It's actually Iran.
Okay.
I think it's like Newfoundland. We say Newfoundland,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's just I
Wait.
think it's a thing where we kind of go Lund.
Although I would say
I say
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland. Yeah.
Do you say Newfoundland? Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I
yeah,
do say
yeah.
that too. Gosh, I don't know.
So I don't know. Someone solve that for us in
So
Iceland.
if we have
or Iceland.
any listeners in Iceland,
Iceland,
please let us
Iceland.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same
and
thing with
also
Greenland,
English.
you know, because Greenland is icy and Iceland is green.
Okay,
Right.
and
So-
if anybody is Canadian, and or American, that is a Mighty Ducks reference as well. So
Oh,
Okay.
yes,
I did
and
not know that.
me neither.
you didn't know that. You just
No.
knew. Well,
Mm.
if you you got to watch Mighty Ducks. Necessary part of your cultural, your North American culture.
discussion.
Anyways,
Okay,
so
where would you go? Where would you
Usually,
go?
yeah,
oh,
very-
right. I think maybe I would go somewhere in Africa because I've been to a lot of continents. I haven't been to South America. I've been to Mexico, but I haven't been to South America and haven't been to Africa.
Mm.
And I would like to just go. I don't know where exactly. I mean, it's a huge continent, so I have literally no idea where, but I would like that. Or Korea because I just spoke about Korean barbecue in another episode, but I love Korean food. So if I was going to go to Korea, it's not my favorite cuisine in the world. I love lots of different kinds of food, but I would like to go on a food tour in Korea.
Mm.
I feel like that'd be really cool. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I already got to go to the Holy Land just before COVID happened. So I would have
remember.
I would have been super pious also and been like, the Holy Land, I totally want to go there. But but I got to go and it was amazing. So anybody who is thinking of actually going somewhere after COVID and all of this ends one day, it's so worth it. Oh my gosh. To bring us back down to something substantial and real. The Holy Land is amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm very sorry that I said that in a Valley Girl voice. I regret it. I really regret it. Anyways, we're talking about really important things today, like Divine Mercy Sunday, which is the topic of our episode. Because that was yesterday. I mean, we're recording way before Divine Mercy Sunday, but when this releases, it would have been yesterday. And as a podcast community, we have been praying the chaplet, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, every Friday, pretty much since we started almost. And I gotta say, every time it's my turn to lead, like when it's not my turn to lead, I don't always get to join. But whenever it's my turn to lead, it always is like, oh, right, Divine Mercy, I have to make time for it. And then whenever I pray it, it is like a reset on my day. It's so beautiful. I find it's, I don't know. What's your guys' experience been praying live on Instagram with Divine Mercy?
Yeah. I find the same. The only, I think, exception to that would be when I'm visiting my sister's house at the time when I'm praying, because then there's like yelling nephews in the background and it's just a little less contemplative. But
It's super cute.
But I find that I'm really grateful because even if you look like the video, we post the IGTV of, the praying together as an IGTV video afterwards, and people pray along afterwards. Like there are views on the video, which I assume mean that people are kind of joining us afterwards to pray, and there's some people who are joining us like at the time to pray now and stuff like that. So that, I think, for me has been the thing of like, it's kind of beautiful to be able to join with people and just stop for a minute.
Yeah.
Listeners. And so I mean, if you didn't know that, we were praying Divine Mercy on Fridays.
Now you do.
And please join us if you can. We love it. It's such a gift. So
I think I've led it maybe twice in all of our months, because often I'm not available at that time. But it's been definitely a blessing. And I've gone through different phases in my life where I'm praying Divine Mercy like every day, and then not at all, and then sometimes on Fridays and things. But whatever, I did notice, especially when I prayed with others, that I've often had good, really like beautiful conversations with the people that I'm praying with afterwards, where it's like, I don't know, just like God is moving. I don't know. I think it's a really powerful prayer that God moves through. So I definitely it's just, it kind of grounds you of like, oh yeah, this is just reality. Um, I think, I don't remember who said this or where I heard this, but somebody said the Divine Mercy Chaplet is like uniting yourself with the Mass, because
Mm.
it's a reminder, like the Mass is this reminder of the suffering, death, and resurrection of Christ, and that is what the Divine Mercy Chaplet is. And so I think that was something that I found really consoling, especially like when we had our more severe, strict lockdowns like a year ago,
Yeah.
and praying and not being able to go to daily Mass again, but then praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet every day was like this opportunity to kind of
Yeah.
unite myself with the Lord in that way. So
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have our plan, well, when we're recording this, is to do the Divine Mercy Novena. So we will just have finished that on Divine Mercy Sunday. So hopefully people have joined us, and our intentions and, the graces that the Lord has for us, is we're kind of experiencing that now, after the novena. Because really there are some very special graces. I mean, we're told that even by Saint Faustina, right? For those who pray the chaplet, for those who contemplate God's mercy and his merciful heart. And that's kind of what we wanted to do in this episode, is just sit with that reality, with the merciful heart of God, with the incredible gift that is God's mercy to us. And in thinking about sort of divine mercy and the tradition that comes from Saint Faustina, really, in God's conversations with her, I've had a very interesting relationship with her, because uh, I don't know if you guys have read her diary, and I haven't read her whole diary. I've just read like bits of it, but it was super hard for me to read when I first encountered it. It was like, it felt just really harsh. Like, it just felt like God was being so harsh with Faustina, and it was odd. I couldn't enter into it at all. And then I went through some experiences of really, really deep suffering in my life in the last few years. And suddenly I understood, like, and I don't even know, I can't even explain it, but it's just like, I opened up the diary and I started reading, and I saw myself in her in some ways, not like because I'm so awesome and holy, but mostly because I'm human, and I'm a daughter of God. And then God is like God. You know what I mean? In Divine
I love
Mercy,
that.
like in her writings, it's like, man, it's kind of like Job. It reminds me of Job. It's like the bigness of God and the littleness of us, and the comfort that's sort of in that, and the call to sort of lose ourselves in that, which isn't necessarily a reflection specifically on, mercy, but I think it kind of leads into that, because mercy is God condescending in a way to us. Like, we don't deserve the love he has for us, and yet he has that love for us anyways. And that's so mind-blowing, and it should be mind-blowing, So that's sort of, that was part of actually what led me to this podcast. The idea for this podcast was connecting with Faustina and suffering through the lens of divine mercy. So yeah, I think I'm still on that journey. But what about you guys? How has this how's divine mercy for you, Erin? What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I have not read the Diary of Saint Faustina. I've read parts of it, kind of similar to you, but I think like, even just thinking about this episode, it kind of makes me want to go back and read the whole thing. Part of it, I think, is because it's such a big book that it's like, I feel like it's intimidating a little bit, in the sense of the commitment that's required for it,
Totally.
Even like, because right now I'm reading the Brothers Karamazov, which is like a big book, and even for that, and it's just like bedtime, recreational reading. Even for that, I was like, whoa, do I really want to commit to like this many pages,
Right.
Anyways, and I'm glad I did, because it's a good book and I'm enjoying it so far. But I feel like it's kind of like that with the diary too. So it's made me like, I'm gonna go back and read it now, I think, the full thing. But I've used parts of it even in retreats, like where there's one part where it's just kind of a I think it's like a blank page, and she just writes like "my will" on it, and then she crosses it out in a big X,
Mm.
just, as a as a way of
Oof.
really, yeah, like crossing out like her own will, to let the Lord's will live in
Man,
her, like so that
can we
her will
pause
would
for a
become the
second?
Lord's. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
That's what a practical, like, as humans, like we need concrete
Yeah.
things. Like
Yeah.
if you're
It's very
struggling to
Yeah.
surrender
sacramental.
stuff,
Yeah.
let's we can do that. Write down a list of all the things and then cross them out.
Wow. That's such a
Ooh.
great idea. I love that. And
Yes,
then
me
cross them out.
too.
Yeah, it's true because it makes like visible and invisible, like the interiority of what we're trying to do. And then to like
Yeah,
put it in and then put it somewhere like in a frame or something like
right.
that, you know?
Yeah, or just burn it and
Yeah.
get rid of it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Channel the
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
Buy
of
my
that there.
will.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Anyway,
I
okay,
think,
sorry,
yeah.
Erin.
So that's my connection with Saint Faustina, I think. But my
Mhm.
connection with Divine Mercy in particular is like John Paul II was he was the Pope when I kind of came back to the church, and I felt like a daughter of his, even though I mean, I think most people kind of felt that way, like there's this deep connection to this man who is so fatherly and so holy and so good. And then I remember the day that he died, and
Yeah.
um like sitting on my parents' bed because they had a television in their room and just watching, just weeping because this
Yeah.
father of mine was has died. And that
Yeah.
was my first experience of any pope dying in my whole life because he
Right.
became pope in 1979. I was born in 1980. So
Yeah.
so it was like a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How
Hmm.
about you, Nicole?
Yeah, I think, I first was like, I don't think I grew up praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet from in my young little years, but there's a lot of Polish folks in Winnipeg and Ukrainians as well, and I think that I remember different, I don't know, prayer groups or youth groups or something, and that I was introduced by these communities to the sung Divine Mercy Chaplet,
Mm-hmm.
and so I still in my mind I'm like, it's supposed
For
to be
the
sung.
sake yeah.
No,
Yeah.
like not that one. It's like
Ooh.
that's like a modern one. It's like um for the sake of his
Eternal.
sorrowful passion,
Oh,
have
yeah.
mercy on us and on the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's so
yes.
beautiful. And so I think there's like a mournfulness and a trust in that in the music of it. And so still I think that's what I think of in the Divine Mercy, of this sort of just like
Mm.
experience of singing with these people, and it's sort of somber and yet there's like a joy in it. So
Mhm.
that's kind of what I think of. And so I still, whenever, if I'm with a group of people who are wanting to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, I always prefer to sing it because I just think there's something different or something beautiful with
Yeah,
that.
there's
Oh,
some.
yeah.
I mean, that's the same with a lot of church things, right? Like even like the Liturgy of the Hours. I love doing the Liturgy of the
Yeah,
Hours when it's chanted, or like there
Mm.
is a primacy of place for chant in the church, and that's
right.
part of the reason
Absolutely.
why is because it just, yeah, it can be so expressive with the
Yeah.
melodies and like all of these things,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that makes me think like when you're talking about the mournful quality. I remember reading like misericordiae is the Latin word for mercy, and it means literally miserable heart.
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that I found was so beautiful. But it doesn't, I don't think it means literally like you're sad and then
Right.
God's like,
Very.
"Oh,
Be
sorry, you're sad."
miserable.
Yeah, that's yeah, yeah, yeah. Where
Yeah,
it's like,
it
"Oh,
could be
I'm
sad,
sorry
but
you're
not
feeling
despairing.
sad." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like more related to our condition, like that
Yeah.
even like regardless of whether I'm feeling consolation or desolation, my condition is miserable because I am under the effects of sin. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there's not joy or goodness or anything like that in my life and in the
Right.
experience of life, but it is a reality that
Yeah.
always in relation to God, I am in need,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and he
Totally.
wants to always in every moment respond to that need,
Totally.
you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's made really clear in her writings too.
Mhm.
I read, I bought the book, her diary, years ago, but I hadn't read it for a while. And then I was going through a really, really difficult period of life several years ago. And I started reading just a little bit of that in my prayer every day.
Mm,
And it was a experience where I couldn't understand everything she was going through. Some of it was kind of beyond me, and it was sort of very spiritual or very. But then there were moments where I was like, she gets it. No one else gets what
Mhm.
I'm going through right now. And it was
Mhm.
a time where I was feeling really alone.
mhm.
And it was like I like had this sister who was like, okay, it's okay that I'm feeling this, because someone else, she's a Canaanite saint and she felt like this too, so it's okay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but like that sadness and that just really be like, yeah, we're not, this is a fallen world. Like there's a lot of suffering. It kind of sucks, you know?
Yeah.
And my own sin and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I had another thought when you said that, Erin. So like, if that's the word you said for mercy, right? Like that.
Misericordia.
Right. So then there's two kind of perspectives in that. There's one is our perspective, like we are in need of God's mercy, so we are miserable. And the other perspective is like God has mercy to give us. And I was just thinking like, and that for me, the connotation there is like God chooses to identify with our miserable hearts in a way. And that's what he did when he became incarnate, right? And that's what the passion is all about, is Jesus literally choosing to identify with the most I don't know what's the word, like the forlorn, the deepest, the greatest suffering that any of us could ever experience. That's where he goes to identify. And I think I've shared the story on our podcast before, but when I went to the Holy Land, actually, we went to the place where Jesus's body was, or Jesus, not his body, where Jesus was kept, or that's what tradition says.
Right.
Like he was imprisoned before his crucifixion.
Before scourging, yeah.
Yeah, I think after his
after scourging, but before the
before the
right,
crucifixion.
Yeah.
And when we were there, this actually Polish priest was asked to pray like with us and for us, and so we were all praying together. But he was the one sort of praying on behalf of all of us, and they read out this psalm. I wish I could remember what psalm it was, and then he sort of preached on it, but it was like a preaching in prayer, and part of that preaching was him saying like, the Lord wants like the most miserable part of your heart, like the darkest place that exists in you. That is where he wants to go. That is where he literally came so that he could go there. And that's what this place that we were in, which is this hole in the ground, this dark, cold hole in the ground, was like a physical embodiment of that dark, cold place in ourselves. Like, you know, like that, the darkness that is in each of us. And so I was like, that to me also blows my mind. Like God chooses, he chooses, like that's a free, like he doesn't have to do this for us, and he chooses to do it. And it's just so beautiful. And that's really, you know, that is an image of mercy really in a lot of ways.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I wanted to know what, like, I was sort of thinking about my own personal experiences of God's mercy, you know, and we're talking here mercy in a broad way, because we can experience mercy as literally like, I'm a terrible sinner, which we all are in some way, shape, or form. And I experienced the Lord coming into that place and healing me and helping me walk out of it and being, you know, his mercy in that sense. But it can also just be an experience of like, God loves me and I don't deserve it. And yet he loves me. And just that experience of like, wow, I'm so like gratitude, that deep gratitude of the love of God. I think broadly speaking, we can think of that in this, you know, in merciful sort of terms. So have you guys, what comes to mind when you think about that?
Yeah. Sorry, go for it, Erin.
I think for me, it's actually really difficult. And sometimes I find it actually hard because people will talk about the mercy of God and like the goodness of the mercy of God and like things. And this is all very, very true. But it's one of the places where I still struggle all the time. And I've had experiences of his mercy. Like my kind of coming back to the church was in confession, which is like the place of, you know, mercy, of his extension of mercy. But I think it's like my own self-sufficiency, and I like being good at things. And actually, I even had kind of an experience this past week of that I think is like a mercy from him, like of things that I've struggled with having like chronic illness, and with like even like the episode that is coming out 1 week after this is on suffering and self-worth. And I know I shared in that about my own issues with like weight and body image and things like that. And there's like a place of me that is still prideful. Like I have so much pride, and it's mercy and pride don't coexist. Like
Yeah.
there is a reception of mercy that requires a humility, like a humiliation. And that was one of the things that I really kind of realized that I needed to confess and to keep confessing is like my own. I don't think I realized how much my own pride had entered into my own like physical condition. And like I want to be able to do things. And it's so hard to let go of not being able to do the things that I want to do, or not being able to control like, yeah, what my body looks like, or any of those things. And so mercy is like a struggle, like it has to be received. It's something that has to be received. And so I think it's good, like it's been good for me to realize that that's okay, like that there's
Mm.
not a withdrawal of mercy, even if I am reticent to receive it, or I'm not able to receive it as fully as the Lord wants to give it to me at any particular time.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
that even like it might be a reception of mercy to whatever degree that you're able to even see what you're describing, right? Like that you're
Yeah.
able to acknowledge what
Yes.
you're saying. Like that in
Yeah.
itself is receiving the Lord's
100%.
mercy in a certain
And
Right.
and it's even like, just to point out too in confession, that I like there is a realness of confession. I've encountered lots of people who've sometimes said like, I'm hesitant to go because I know I'm just going to do the same things again and stuff like that. And it's like I always I feel like I can say, just go, just keep going and keep going and keep going, because my own experience of that has been like, the more I go and the more I confess these things, which is why it's such a mercy to like realize this about my own heart and what I'm hanging on to, is
Yeah.
because then I can bring it and verbalize it in confession. And through that, like bringing it to him, he's able to purify it and to like take away that, pride or that struggle or whatever, So it is a
Mhm.
good thing. You're right. It is a mercy to just realize those things.
Yeah.
I feel like a bobblehead. I'm like nodding so much. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's true. It's so
That's
true.
funny. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
How about you, Nicole?
Yeah. It's interesting. I had one kind of specific experience, which I'll share, that came to mind. But even as you're speaking, Erin, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's like complexity of what qualifies as experiences of mercy, And like, so I have, when I was in my early 20s, I think I was just coming to a place where realizing that my faith was a lot based on just trying to know all the Catholic things and be able to articulate them, and sort of very intellectual. And um I feel like I was kind of a jerk a lot of the time, and just like yeah, just not, there was something missing and I didn't realize that. And um but noticing that other people in my life, they seemed to be, they weren't as obsessed with trying to look like perfect Catholics all the time, but there was something more real about their faith and their relationship with God, and I wanted that. So I started praying. I remember praying every day, like, God, make my faith real. Make my faith real. Please, God, make my faith real. And didn't really know what I was asking for. And then there was this one day where I was just, I don't remember what I was doing. I don't know if I was trying to pray or just resting or whatever. Anyways, um, at home, and it was like this instant where I felt like I saw myself as God sees me, which was like the fullness of all of my, I mean, this is not quite as God sees me, but like as I am, I guess, which is like the fullness of my sin, and just realizing like all these ways that I am awful, and all of this stuff. But in that exact same instant, not a moment later or earlier, in the same instant,
Mm.
it was this experience of just how incredibly loved I am and how I'm totally forgiven of all those things. And
Mm-hmm.
it was really profound. And I just started like ugly crying. And then I remember my mom running in and being like, what's wrong? What's going on? And I'm like, I don't really, just praying, God, or something. But
So great.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it was like, it was something that it had a really profound effect, I think, on my, it wasn't like, oh, after that I stopped being a jerk, but it was like I started developing, I think, a more authentic prayer life, and or
Mm.
maybe even just started praying more consistently, and growing, in authenticity and stuff in my relationship with God, and things. So,
That's
you
so.
know, so I think that was definitely an experience of mercy. But even like when you're speaking, Erin, I can recognize that some of the sufferings and the things that have gone through and I'm going through in my life right now, that those are mercies, because
Mm.
they're in certain areas of my life, I feel like I excel and I know what I'm doing and it feels great, and it's, I can navigate the challenge and there's a real confidence. um and it's so easy to be tempted to pride in that and think that I'm so great, and that, that this is like not recognizing that that's a grace, and so it's really balanced out in other areas of my life where there's tremendous uncertainty, um and it's a real suffering, like it's a real cross, but I think that is in itself a mercy, because it's
Mhm.
like, um the Lord protecting me from pride, and not that I still don't fall in that area, I certainly do, but like just realizing, yeah, I don't know, just like that the suffering is a mercy,
Mhm.
because it is like the Lord keeping me, I don't know,
Yeah.
keeping me reminded that I actually need his mercy, you know?
Yeah. It's kinda like Saint Alphonsus Liguori in Uniformity with God's Will, like, such a great book.
Mm.
But he talks about that in that all things that the Lord sends to us is gift, right? Like,
Yeah.
the things that are, our consolations are given, for encouragement and for happiness and joy and all those kind of things. And then, the things that come to us that are challenging or suffering or things like that are meant to purify us and to perfect us in our love and to allow us to encounter him more and to, like we can experience like purgatory on earth essentially. Like, I mean, I think
Mhm.
that the Lord's greatest desire would be to purify us during our earthly lives to such an extent that we are immediately with him in heaven, because I don't think he even desires for us to experience the suffering of purgatory, really,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
I mean,
totally.
that it just makes you think of mercy, because in that way, then everything is mercy. Like,
Mhm.
what is it Pope Francis who said the face of God is mercy?
I think so.
I
It
think it
sounds
might
like
have
it he
been
would have, because
sound,
it
yeah, it
sounds like it.
sounds like him,
And
something
also
like
the
that.
year of mercy, I'm wondering if he said it during the year of mercy,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
he
yeah. It
did.
could have been, yeah, yeah. But like, but really, to look at everything as that, like, it is a mercy when I recognize my own sin. It is a mercy
Mhm.
when I recognize my own weakness. It is a mercy when I bear humiliation. It is a
Yeah.
mercy when I'm suffering. It is like, all of it is mercy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it is
It
all
is
recognizing my condition, allowing me to recognize who
exactly.
God is. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
mercy, whatever it is in our life that drives us to God every day, saying, God, help me.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's a mercy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think for me, I mean, like you both have said, I think there's so much that we could count as an experience of God's mercy that way. But I remember in spiritual direction one time a while ago, I had confession, and it was one of those situations where I was like, oh, confessing the same thing again. And I think that day I was just really, I kind of was, I don't know if I want to say I hadn't given up, but I was like,
Mm.
oh, like again, and it sort of was a discipline. I was like, oh, I'm just going to confess it. But I was like, I just feel like this is never going to end. Like, I'm never going to be better at this. And I felt so ashamed of
Mm.
myself, and I remember after my confession, or maybe it was like when I was getting spiritual sort of direction, because it was my spiritual director who was my confessor, he he looked at me, and he just literally looked at me, and I don't think he didn't mean to or anything like that, but he looked at me like I felt like Jesus would look at me,
Mm.
And it was like so tender and just, I don't know, just like loving and just accepting of who I was, but also like delighting in me, like not in any way rejecting me. Like it was just a
Right.
total reception of who I was in that moment. It was
Mm.
very brief, and I really think it was just a grace from the Lord. I don't know if my spiritual director was even intentional about how
Right.
he was seeing me in that moment, but it was so powerful because it was like a moment. I think of the condemned woman, like the woman caught in adultery,
Mhm.
and how when no one stones her, and the Lord like is bent down writing on the ground, and they all leave, and then he looks at her, and it felt
Mhm.
like that was probably how he looked at her, when she
Yeah.
was caught literally in the worst, like the most shameful thing ever, and had
Mhm.
every sort of reason to be looked at with condemnation by the one who is pure love, like who doesn't know sin, right?
Yeah.
And then to be looked at by love in that way is just healing. Like it's
Mhm.
just healing. And I remember just thinking, I, this is how Jesus always sees me. Like every time I go to confession, every time I show up in my mess, he sees me like that.
Mhm.
And it's so it's the thing that allows you to be humble, because you're like, I don't need to be proud. Like, there's no reason to stand on my own 2 feet in front of someone who looks at me like that. Like,
Mhm.
that's just someone who wants to love me. And it's a struggle for me too, like a big struggle for me, but I think I hold that, I really treasure that moment because I just think it's sort of God peeled back the curtain a little bit for me and was like, this is who I like. Do you understand now?
Yeah.
Like, do you get it? You don't have to fight me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
fight with God a lot, honestly. And
Mhm.
he pulled back the curtain and was like, you don't have to fight. Like, I'm not your enemy here.
Yeah. Which
Mhm.
is true. Why, like, we need to be able to reveal mercy to each other, so that
Yeah.
like there's something very incarnational in that, in the way that
Mhm.
God is asking us to do that to each other, so that we can understand a bit more of how God does that for us. Like how
Yeah.
He gazes at us with mercy, and it makes me think every time about the Poco a Poco podcast. And for the life of me, I cannot remember whether it is Father Innocent or Father Angelus, because I mix them up all the time. But whoever works with the postulants, I think it might be Father Innocent. Anyways, but he always says, like, if you listen to that podcast, you're knowing exactly what I'm talking about. He always says, like, look at me. Hey, 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 look at me. Look at me. So that he can, I mean, basically so that he can gaze
Yeah.
on the struggles and maybe even the humiliations that people are experiencing with a gaze of love, like
Mhm.
and even myself, like, those are some of the most privileged times in ministry that I can think
Mm.
of, is when I was able to do that,
Yeah.
because that's not, like, I'm sure we've all experienced that when somebody comes to us and they're sharing something that's super vulnerable or like shameful, or like where they carry a lot of woundedness or whatever, and like in that moment, in those moments, where the Lord is like, where there's such a swelling up of the heart of love for that person, that it's like the desire, it's like sharing that desire of the Lord in some way, like in this beautiful way of being able to like look at somebody and like in total, like in love,
Mhm.
and just being able to like see the goodness of the person that is there, and that is the fundamental part of who they are, which is not their sin. That's like why my favorite quote is like, we are not the sum of our weaknesses and failures. We are the sum of the Father's love for us and our real capacity to become the image of His Son, you know?
Yeah. And that is that, I mean, that's the experience of God's mercy right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like an exhaust, like we could talk about this forever. And I think in some ways, like we are meant to enter into this Divine Mercy Sunday. I mean, we wanted to mention this. Pope John Paul II is the one who instituted the Feast of
Mhm.
Divine Mercy.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful story that Father Michael Gately gives. I think it's called The Second Greatest Story Ever Told. And it's like, you can get it with the Lighthouse CDs or whatever, but just highly recommend you listen to that. Because you mentioned, Erin, how John Paul died and we were crying. He died on, I think, the eve of Divine Mercy
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah. Right.
And it's just this gorgeous story of how God has done that for the church through this amazing Pope that we all love so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the feast is there to help us to realize, like, this needs to be a running thread, all through our lives. Like, it's that important that
Mhm.
we never forget who God really is, like God's face is really the face of mercy.
Mhm.
Um, and especially as a podcast on suffering, I think, like, we think
Yeah.
about suffering,
Yeah.
we need that. Like, we're not
Mhm.
gonna get through this without that.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really the church does like institute, this is the liturgical thing, why it's so important, like there is a feast day in the church where everybody in the whole church is recognizing that the face of God is mercy and what that means, and that's what the church does. Like, that's why we have, feast days for saints and stuff like that, is to like recognize all these things, and why there's even a push now for like instituting a feast of the family. I think that was
mhm,
it, from
mm,
consoling, or from the consecration to Saint Joseph,
mm.
because there is, like putting those things into our liturgy and our like worship is like a huge way of recognizing the importance of something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. So, well, we hope you guys had an awesome Divine Mercy Sunday. And yeah, we're still gonna keep, well, till our podcast is over. I think we'll be praying the chaplet every Friday.
Mhm.
And then when we come back in September, we'll go back to the chaplet every Friday. And if we do anything around that in the summer, we'll update on Instagram. So
maybe we'll sing it sometime. Maybe I can sing.
Yeah. Yes. On
Yeah,
maybe
let's do it.
on Good Friday.
Yeah. Good
Ooh,
idea.
that would be cool. Okay,
good.
so stay tuned for that. Okay, so God winks, ladies. Let's wrap up with some God winks. What about you, Erin? What's your God wink
Oh,
this week?
yes. So my God wink is that I was able to go and get my eyebrows waxed for the first time since before we entered into the first lockdown.
Yeah.
So listen, for those who are watching on YouTube right now, you can see my face. It's not covered in eyebrow. Just kidding. I did have the ability to pluck my eyebrows, so whatever. But it was just so nice because it's something that I'm used to doing. I'm like, oh, this is lovely. And then I was talking to the woman who did the eyebrows. And I'm like, oh, so how's business been? And she's like, oh, it's not really good. People are not coming back yet. I was like, oh, I'll have to come and get a pedicure at some point or whatever. And she's like, well, do you just want one now? How do you say no to that, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I guess so. Okay.
Yeah,
So
sure.
but it was cool because I got like a pedicure and a manicure, and I don't usually get them like once in a while or something like that. But it turns out that their family is a Catholic family. They go to a Vietnamese parish here in Ottawa. They're like this lovely couple. We were able to have this conversation about like Rome. She really wants to go to Rome and see Rome and all of these things. And it was lovely. And it was like
That's
a gift
awesome.
during the day. And I was like, oh, this is real gift, like the Lord just pampered me for a day, which was lovely. So
that's so nice. She can join the consecrated virgins pilgrimage to like not her and her
husband
family.
was doing my feet and she was doing my hands.
Well, is it like, okay, here's my question then.
Yes.
Is the consecrated virgins pilgrimage like it's like you have to be a consecrated?
You have to be a consecrated virgin. Yes.
You can't just join the party.
You cannot.
You're in some other vocation.
That's right. They're going to check if you have your certificate or not. Just kidding. There's not a certificate.
What about you, Nicole? What's your God wink?
Yeah, I think mine was research related. So I've been trying to get some equipment stuff figured out for one of the experiments that I want to run. I'm doing my PhD in music and health. So we want to run some experiments on music's impact on movement. And we have this like custom made flat screen that we're going to use, but it's been glitching. And so I've been in contact with folks in Germany who helped to make it, about how to navigate it. And then this week was talking to the manufacturer and then going back and forth with my supervisor to figure out what to do. And I just really like reached the end where I'm like, I don't know what else to do. And so I was talking to my supervisor and he's like, well, we'll buy a new one. And I was like, oh, great.
Problem solved. Amazing.
Yeah. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know what I'm going to have to redo my whole, like experiment plan and all this stuff. And realizing like, oh yeah, okay, great. We'll just buy a new one. Like, praise God. So that was, we just found that out yesterday. And so just
I love it.
A little moment of like, oh, okay, great. Thank you, God. Like all is not lost.
That's right. Yeah. How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, so if anyone kind of is watching this on YouTube, my nose looks very different. I have this like big mark on the side of my nose because I had to have some surgery and get something removed from my nose. So I've got some stitches there.
I loved when you said that it was very different. I'm like, hey, it's not, when you said that, I like pictured like a hooked nose or like a,
I mean, you know what? It's far right now on Zoom. It's like far enough away from me that I think it looks really benign, and it doesn't look, it's not like insanely terrible or something, but it's definitely way more noticeable. Like if you were standing in front of me. Right. So maybe that's what I have in my mind.
We're going to get so many hits on this particular episode YouTube video.
That's right. Exactly.
What's your nose look like?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It honestly just looks like you have a nose ring. Like really, that's pretty much what it looks like.
Yeah, that's what some students of faith study I'm doing said. Anyways, but yeah, it's not a nose ring, it's stitches. It's a thread. It's a nose ring made out of thread.
Right. Yes.
Anyways, so I was in surgery, but it was like it's a day surgery and it's local anesthesia. So I was, awake and stuff, and they had just frozen this part of my face. But I could talk and everything. And so I'm in surgery and the surgeon's like doing his thing and he goes, so what are you studying or whatever? What do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm like a full-time theology student. He's like, oh, theology. He goes, like, then for the next 5 to 7 minutes, he's like, so, that whole thing about the Trinity, like, did they just like, it was just like a Pope in the Middle Ages? He just kind of like instituted it. Like one day he just was like, the Trinity, like, we're just going to do that. So I'm getting surgery on my nose. And I'm like, no, actually, it was actually well-founded, like in things that Jesus said, and then the early church was baptizing in the name of the Trinity. Literally as he's like lobbing something off my nose. I'm like, this,
That's
and I'm
awesome.
like, I was like delirious a little bit. And I was like, I don't know if I'm evangelizing very well right now.
Or if this is a heresy.
Yeah,
because it's involving the Trinity.
Seriously. I was like, this is such a precarious situation.
That's so funny.
So great.
And then I came out of surgery and I was like kind of loopy, and I was hilarious because my inhibitions were all down. And then I was talking to my brother after it all faded, and I was like, what did I say? Like, what did I say? So when I go to my follow-up, I think it was okay, but I don't know. So my follow-up, I'm preparing currently a short paper on the history of the doctrine of the Trinity, which I will deliver to my surgeon.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's my God wink.
That's awesome.
That's so funny.
And on that note, thanks guys for great conversation, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. Yeah.
Amen.
Bye everybody. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.